Welcome back to our new story, Shadow of Vengeance, a mafia romance tale. Before Chapter 1 begins, let the world whisper its secrets. In a realm carved by fate and fire, where hearts break louder than wars and silence often speaks more than screams, there begins a journey unlike any other. This is not just a story, it's a heartbeat pressed between pages, a war of love, loss, loyalty, and the hunger for something more. Every word ahead will test your soul. Now close your eyes. Breathe in and step beyond the ordinary. The real story begins now. 5. Shadow of Vengeance. A lullaby of blood and betrayal. The moon hung low, drowning the streets in a silver light. The air was thick with tension, a silence that cracked like a fragile glass. In this world, a lullaby could easily turn into a dirge. Elena stood at the entrance of the dark alley, her heart pounding in her chest like a war drum. She had wanted to forget her past, but it was a shadow that never left her side, an echo of blood and betrayal. The scent of danger mixed with the whiff of fresh rain, and she knew it was time to face the ghost that haunted her. A faint sound broke the stillness. Someone was coming. Elena instinctively reached for the small dagger hidden beneath her jacket. The footsteps grew louder, heavier, and she felt her pulse quicken. This was a game of power and desire, and she was trapped in the middle, a pawn in a dangerous chess match. When Marco stepped into view, the moonlight revealed the sharp angles of his face. He was handsome in a dangerously charming way, his dark eyes sparkling with secrets. They had shared a fleeting love, a passion ignited amidst chaos and bloodshed. But their story had been woven with lies, and now it threatened to unravel. "Elena," he said softly, his voice a low rumble. He stepped closer, the heat of his body reaching her. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," she shot back, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions in her chest. She had dressed this evening in bold colors, wanting to show her transformation, her strength. But looking at Marco, she felt flickers of the girl she had been, a girl who thought love could conquer all. "I have to know the truth," she pressed, frustration mingling with a sense of urgency. "Did you sell me out? Did you betray me to save yourself?" The words hung in the air like a knife. He flinched but quickly masked his emotions with darkness. "That's not how it happened," Marco retaliated, closing the distance between them. His scent enveloped her, a blend of danger and familiarity. "You know this was bigger than us. The families, the code. I had no choice. But you had a choice, Marco. You always had a choice." She felt her heart crack open, spilling out years of hurt and anger. The night air grew colder, wrapping around them like a vice. "You could have saved me." He looked away, denying her the satisfaction of witnessing his pain. "And what about you? You played your part in this game, too. Remember the night you tried to escape?" His words were like icy water splashed in her face, cutting through the haze of past affection. Silence stretched between them, heavy with memories. Their shared laughter, the stolen moments, the promises whispered in each other's ears suddenly felt sinister. Each memory was a wound that would not heal. She thought she could forgive him, but betrayal thrummed in her veins, dark and potent, reminding her of the lives they had disrupted. "Remember what you told me?" he said suddenly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Love can be a weapon. It can destroy as easily as it can create." "Then we are both guilty," she replied, her throat tightening. Was there a part of her that still loved him? The conflict raged within, battling between the heart that pulsed with painful affections and the mind that demanded vengeance. Elena took a step back. "Perhaps it's time to put the weapon down, Marco," she said, trying to smother the flicker of warmth that threatened to ignite in her heart. They were standing on a battlefield of shattered dreams and dark intentions. But Marco shook his head, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, an echo of the boy she had once fallen for. "And what if I can't? What if I don't want to? What if it's the only thing I know how to do?" Their argument twisted, revealing the deeper fissures in their bond. It simmered with the intensity of a wildfire, threatening to consume them both. Marco lunged for her, grabbing her, arms with a fierce desperation. "Elena, I never stopped loving you. Don't you understand? I did what I had to do to survive." The very air between them felt electric. This was a man shaped by cruelty, but she could still see the flickers of the boy who had dared to dream. "Love shouldn't come with a price," she whispered, her voice breaking. In that moment, a gunshot shattered the night. The sound echoed through the alley, as sharp as the betrayal that had driven them apart. Instinct drove them into a sheltering embrace, their bodies colliding as if to shield one another from the chaos of their world. Time froze as they stood together, fear intertwining with an undeniable connection. "Run," she whispered, even though every ounce of her hesitated. "Elena, you can't leave," Marco said, panic flaring in his eyes. "We can still fight." "Fight," she replied, eyes blazing with determination. "Fight for what? A life bound by lies and death?" She took a breath, the taste of iron in her mouth. "I will not be a pawn anymore." In that decision, as the chaos enveloped them, she felt the weight of vengeance and loss crashing down. Stepping away, she sank her dagger into the darkness, ready to reclaim her story. "I have my own path to forge. We were a beautiful lie, Marco, but it's time for me to wake up." Resolute, Elena turned away from the man who had been both her lover and traitor. The night was alive with shadows, but this time she was ready. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to walk, each step moving further away from betrayal and closer to the truth she craved. In the cold air, she felt the remnants of a lullaby, one of blood, yes, but also of strength. A reminder that even amidst the darkest moments, she could find her way back to the light. Shadow of Vengeance. The blood-red reckoning. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky a deep crimson. It was as if the heavens themselves bled for what was about to happen. Elena stood at the edge of a secluded rooftop, her heart racing like the flickering flames that danced in her mind. This was no longer just about love or betrayal. It was about vengeance, and she was ready to claim it. With every beat of her heart, the weight of her past bore down on her like a heavy shroud. Tonight would mark the turning point. Tonight, she would be reborn. As the wind whipped through her hair, she recalled the moment she had decided to break free from the bonds of the past. It had been a night cloaked in darkness, a time when fear ruled her every decision. But now she embraced that fear, letting it guide her. Beneath her facade of strength, the doubts flickered. Could she truly confront the family that had torn her world apart? Could she face Marco again, knowing the truth hung heavily between them like a sword? The sound of footsteps disrupted her thoughts. She turned abruptly. Marco appeared below her, tension etched in every line of his body. For a second, the breath caught in her throat. His presence was magnetic and dangerous. He held a gun in his hand, but it was not pointed at her. Not yet. "Elena," he called, his voice strained. "You need to leave. It's not safe here." "Not safe?" she echoed, bitterness clawing at her throat. "You think I care about safety anymore? I want answers, Marco, and I want revenge." Behind him, shadows moved. Members of the rival family approached, their intentions shrouded in danger. She felt a rush of adrenaline as she stepped closer to the edge, choosing the high ground and refusing to back down. Fear was a ghost, but vengeance was a fire she could feel burning in her veins. "Get down!" Marco shouted, rushing toward her. His eyes were wild with urgency, like a man desperate to save someone who was already lost. "They're coming for you," but Elena stood firm. "I'm not afraid, Marco. I have nothing left to lose." The truth clawed its way to the surface. She was tired of hiding, tired of pretending her scars didn't hurt. She had been betrayed, not only by him, but by a family that should have protected her. The longing for justice clawed at her gut. She took a deep breath, feeling the heat of her own conviction. "If you truly love me, you won't stop me." "Love can't shield you from bullets," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Maybe not," she shot back, "but it can give me strength." Before she could process his expression, a mix of fury and fear, gunfire erupted from below. Marco instinctively wrapped an arm around her, pulling her away from the edge. The bullets screamed, zipping past where she had stood just moments before. It was chaos. The world spun in a frenzy of sound and danger, and adrenaline surged through her. "Come with me," Marco yelled, dragging her toward cover. They ducked behind a low wall on the rooftop, breaths heavy with panic. She could see the enemy fighters closing in, grim faces twisted with malice. They were the same shadows that had pulled her into darkness, that had ripped apart her world. "We can still escape," he pleaded, searching her face. "We can leave this behind." "No!" she snapped, the words spilling from her mouth like fire. "This ends tonight." Elena's heart thundered. With a swift motion, she reached into her jacket and pulled out her own weapon, a gun she had acquired during her journey of self-discovery. It felt cold and foreign in her hands, but the weight anchored her. Marco's eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious." "I am," she replied, her voice steady. "I won't let them take anything else from me." Just as she climbed to her feet, ready to confront the approaching foes, Marco grabbed her wrist. "You don't know what you're facing. "I know enough," she interrupted, pulling her arm free. "The dirty secrets, the lies. It's time to expose them all." As if summoned, the rival operatives stormed onto the rooftop. They were menacing and cold, eyes glinting under the moonlight. Elena raised her gun, holding it straight. Their laughter echoed in her ears, filled with disdain. "Who does she think she is?" one of them mocked, taking a step forward. "A fool," Marco growled, moving to stand beside her, "but a fool with courage." Elena felt the words settle inside her. Courage was something she had fought for, something she had bled for. "You think you can take what's mine? You think I'll back down?" she shouted, her voice cutting through the night. She felt her heart racing, fueled by a wild determination. "You've already lost, girl," the leader of the rival gang sneered, pulling out his weapon. The moment stretched, heavy with finality. Time slowed as Elena's heart beat in rhythm with her resolve. In that instant, she saw the truth, simple yet profound. She was more than a player in their cruel game. She was the queen of her own story. With a fierce shout that drowned out her fear, she pulled the trigger. The shot echoed, a thunderclap in the night. The world began to whirl in chaos as she fired again and again. As the first men dropped, she felt strength surge through her. Vengeance was not just about bloodshed, it was about reclaiming her power. Marco fought beside her, but this was her battle. Each shot she fired took them closer to the reckoning she had long desired. When the dust settled, the rooftop was silent but for the heavy sound of their breaths. Elena looked around at the fallen, at the shadows that had sought to drown her. It felt surreal, but it was freeing. "Is this what it takes?" she whispered into the stillness, searching Marco's eyes. He stepped closer, vulnerability etching his features. "You're not alone anymore," he replied, his voice gentle. "But do you see what you've become?" "I'm not just a shadow," she breathed, meeting his gaze. "I'm a survivor." In that blood-red reckoning, with lives intertwined by love and betrayal, she understood the weight of her choices. In her quest for vengeance, she had found herself, and a new purpose. The night may be dark, but she was ready to enter the light, where the ghosts of her past would no longer haunt her. With every beat, she felt powerful, walking forward into an uncertain future, hand in hand with the man she once feared. Redemption was no longer a distant dream. It was within reach, waiting for her. Embrace. Shadow of vengeance, shattered illusions, and burning desires. Elena stared into the mirror, but the reflection staring back was a stranger. She touched her face, tracing the bruises that had formed, a physical reminder of the chaos that surrounded her. The night had been explosive, and even now, echoes of gunfire played like a haunting melody in her mind. She was alive, yes, but at what cost? The weight of her choices pressed heavily on her shoulders. In seeking vengeance, she had shattered not only her illusions, but the fragile ties that once held her heart together. Marco stood behind her, his presence like a dark shadow in the room. She met his gaze in the glass, searching for something, anything, that could assure her it was still him. "What now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He took a step closer, the warmth of his body radiating toward her. "We've won a battle, but this war is far from over. They won't let us go easily." She turned to face him, anger igniting within. Her. Why do you keep underestimating me? I can handle this. I'm not the naive girl you once knew. Exactly, he exclaimed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. You're brave, but this is dangerous. We need to think strategically, not act on pure emotion. His passion struck a nerve. Pure emotion? You think the fire in my soul is just anger? She stepped closer, heart racing. No, Marco, it's desire, a burning need to reclaim what I lost. I want to protect you, he insisted, gripping her shoulders. Every time I see you in danger, it tears me apart. I can't lose you again. The softness in his eyes mirrored the intensity of her feelings, a complex mix of love and urgency. The silence stretched, heavy with unspoken words. Elena wanted to shout, to scream that she knew the dangers, that she refused to go back to the life of fear and submission. But as she stood there facing Marco's earnest plea, her resolve flickered. She had fought tooth and nail to escape the restraints of her past. Would this man who once betrayed her trust now help her reclaim her future? I'm not asking for your protection, she said firmly, shaking off his grip. I am asking for your partnership. His brow furrowed, confusion clouding his features. You want me to fight alongside you? After everything? After everything, she affirmed, her voice steady. The connection between them crackled like electricity, a reminder of how intertwined their fates had become. She could feel the heat radiating between them, a reminder of the passion that had once ignited their hearts. He hesitated, searching her eyes for doubts. Okay, he finally said, but we do this my way. Your way, she countered, crossing her arms. What does that even mean? It means we gather our resources, find out what they're planning, and strike when the opportunity presents itself, he explained, a spark of determination igniting in his voice. Frustration bubbled up inside her. You think we can just sit back and wait? They'll come for us. They'll come for me. If we don't act now, we may lose any chance to reclaim our lives. The tension grew thicker. Marco ran a hand over his face, the stress visible in the deepening lines of his expression. And if we charge in blind, we could lose everything. You need to trust me, please. Elena turned away, fury mixing with uncertainty. She wanted to trust him, she really did, but her heart was still raw from the hurt. The man before her had once betrayed her, and now he stood asking for her faith. Could she give it? Fine, she finally conceded, her voice steely. But if this falls apart, it falls on both of us. Just don't think of me as your savior. We're in this together, he replied, moving closer once more. In that moment, the unspoken desires thrummed in the air between them. Memories of stolen kisses and whispered dreams intertwined with the weight of their new reality. The flame within her, ignited by the need for vengeance, flickered with something deeper, something she thought she had lost. Elena trembled, biting her lip to hold back the swell of emotion. The desire to step forward, to lose herself in him, battled against the voice that cautioned her against repeating past mistakes. Can we truly do this? She whispered, vulnerability creeping into her tone. We can, together, he promised, his eyes searching hers. But outside the walls of their fragile sanctuary, the shadows lurked, and danger loomed ever closer. They had ignited a wildfire, and the enemies would not let it burn unchecked. Hours turned into days as they plotted their next move, seeking intelligence on the rival family's whereabouts. Each passing moment was a delicate dance, balancing on the thin line between love and survival. The more they delved into the darkness, the more Elena felt the weight of guilt for craving the thrill of the hunt. Every night, after long hours of planning, they would retreat into the silence of their shared space. Distant sounds of the city crept into the corners, wrapping around them like shadows. She could feel Marco's eyes on her, assessing, searching for cracks in her facade. Then came the night when everything changed. They had received a tip about a meeting taking place in an abandoned warehouse. It was the perfect opportunity to confront their enemies head-on, but doubt snaked its way back into Elena's mind. Would this be their salvation or their demise? Are you ready? Marco asked, his voice low and calm, but his eyes betrayed the storm brewing within him. I am, she replied, though her heart felt heavy in her chest. They arrived at the warehouse under the cover of night, shadows enveloping them. The air was thick with tension. As they moved through the darkness, Elena clutched her gun, the chill of metal cold against her palm. They ducked behind crates, faces set with determination. The sounds of muffled voices rose and fell, a cruel reminder of their impending confrontation. The time had come for shattered illusions to collide with burning desires. Suddenly, the doors swung open, and figures began to filter inside. Elena's breath caught. Marco gripped her arm, urging her to stay low. They watched closely as the leader of the rival family stepped into the light, flanked by his loyal men. In this world, loyalty means everything, the man thundered, a dark smile spreading across his face. And I don't take betrayal lightly. Elena's heart raced, anger bubbling within her. She had long been a pawn in this game, but now she was holding the pieces in her hands. She was taking control. As the words hung in the air, she shared a glance with Marco, a silent promise passing between them. In that moment, she knew what she had to do. She would shatter the chains that bound her past and walk into the fire of her desires. It was time to break free, for herself, for Marco, and for the love that surged between them like wildfire. Elena stepped out from the shadows, gun aimed and heart pounding. You don't know who you're dealing with, she declared, voice steady as she faced the threat. The world shifted beneath her feet, and the burning desires within began to take flight. The moment of truth had arrived, and no matter the outcome, she would not run again. This was her reckoning, a chance to reshape her fate. Shadow of vengeance through the veil of treachery and passion. The world blurred around Elena as she stepped through the door of the warehouse, her heart pounding like a war drum in her ears. She felt the weight of the moment. It was not just a confrontation, it was her rebirth. Inside, the air was thick with tension, charging the atmosphere with palpable electricity. Shadows danced across the walls, and she could sense the danger lurking behind every corner, a treachery waiting to unfold. Marco stood by her side, his expression fierce yet protective. They had fought through their doubts and fears, bonded by the chaos surrounding them. Tonight they would face the truth together, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of hope. But beneath that hope lay a simmering dread. What if they failed? What if all their planning led to nothing? Elena pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the figures congregating at the far end of the vast room. The rival family members were gathered, their loyalty and malice swirling like a storm. She could see the leader, a man named Victor, his dark features lit up by an overhead lamp. He exuded a chilling control, a master of this dangerous game. "Ah, our dear Elena," he called out, his voice smooth as silk. "You finally decided to show up." The taunting tone sent anger rushing through her veins. "I'm here to settle things," she declared, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. Victor laughed lightly, a sound that was more mocking than genuinely amused. "Settle? No, my dear. We're about to start a war." Elena's heart raced. She glanced at Marco, whose eyes reflected the same mix of determination and uncertainty she felt. They were on the brink of a battle, but not just one of bullets and blood. This was a fight for their very souls, woven together by passion and laced with treachery. The stakes were as high as ever. "You think you can step into my territory without consequences?" Victor continued, stepping closer. Sinadium, confidence in his stride unnerving. "You've made a powerful enemy, and now you will pay the price." Elena clenched her jaw, feeling a fire igniting inside her. "Number I will not be your pawn any longer." The tension thickened like fog, swirling around them as if the room were responding to her defiance. Marco shifted beside her, his presence a solid anchor. "We know about the deals you've made to stab us in the back," he said, voice low but clear. "It's over, Victor." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Is that what you think? That you can just waltz in here and take control?" Suddenly, the tension snapped and chaos erupted. Gunshots rang out as members of both families dove for cover. Elena's instincts kicked in. She dropped to the floor, her heart racing faster than she thought possible. They were caught in a deadly crossfire, the eruption of violence blurring the lines of morality. As she crawled behind a stack of crates, adrenaline pulsed through her body. "We need to move, Marco," she cried, scanning the room for an escape route. He nodded, his face set in fierce determination. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about taking them down. With a fierce resolve, Elena pulled her gun from her holster, feeling empowered. "Then let's end this." They leaped into action, darting from cover to cover, exchanging fire in the dim light. Every shot was a reminder of her purpose, a testament of her willingness to confront the darkness that had once engulfed her life. But amidst the shadowy chaos, a flicker of doubt crept in. As they took down one enemy after another, memories of the love they had both fought for surfaced, clashing with the brutal reality of their situation. The gunfire roared around them, but all she could think about was the past, the stolen moments that had led to this very confrontation. Did they really have to destroy everything in their path? Was this the only way to freedom? "Elena," Marco shouted, pulling her back to the present. "Focus. We need to get to Victor." The weight of his words sliced through her. "I know," she yelled over the din, determination rising once more. Finally, they reached the makeshift barricade that sheltered Victor. He stood behind it, eyes sharp and calculating. As their eyes met, Elena felt a twinge of fear mingled with anger. This man had threatened everything she once held dear. It was time to shatter the illusions of safety he had created. "This is the end of your reign, Victor," she declared, raising her weapon. "Foolish girl," he spat, a cruel grin spreading across his face. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." But Elena felt different now. Fear wasn't her master anymore. With renewed resolve, she fired a shot, the bullet echoing through the thick air. It grazed Victor's arm, and he let out a cry of pain. "Not so invincible, huh?" she taunted, heart racing. The facade of control slipped, and Victor's eyes darkened with rage. "You'll pay for that." Before he could retaliate, Marco stepped in, his aim precise and unforgiving. Another shot rang out, and Victor staggered back, blood spilling from his shoulder. Elena felt the rush of victory surge through her. It was exhilarating. They were reclaiming their lives, their power. Yet the thought of killing lingered in the air. Was this what she wanted? But there was no turning back. Marco and Elena pressed forward, the rush of adrenaline fueling their battle. Every gunshot felt like a heartbeat, a reminder that they were still alive in a world that threatened to consume them. "Together," she shouted to Marco, and together they fought fiercely toward victory. But as they drew closer to defeating Victor, a question lingered in the back of her mind. What would they become in the process? The final confrontation erupted in a clash of wills. With one last act of defiance, Elena aimed at Victor, her finger hovering over the trigger. "You took everything from me. I won't let you escape." As she pulled the trigger, a wave of conflicting emotions crashed over her. In that moment, she understood that while she sought revenge, what truly mattered was the sacrifice of their past and the burning desire to reclaim their lives. The bullet found its mark, a shot echoing through the warehouse like the final note of a haunting melody. As Victor fell, the room fell silent, the weight of destiny crushing down. Elena breathed heavily, facing the aftermath of their choices. They had crossed the veil of treachery, yet emerged with both the scars of battle and the flickering flame of passion. The darkness may haunt her, but in the ashes of this victory, she could finally step toward the light, her heart alive with purpose and the promise of a new beginning. Shadow of Vengeance. A covenant of ashes and desire. Elena stood in the aftermath of chaos, a stillness enveloping her like a shroud. The warehouse lay in ruins, echoes of gunfire replaced by an unsettling silence. Shadows danced in the corners, remnants of the battle that had erupted only hours before. She looked down at the ground, at the scattered debris and the lives that had been shattered tonight. Here, amid the ashes of confrontation, she felt the weight of a covenant forming, a promise, made not just to herself, but to the flame that had ignited her spirit. Marco emerged from the shadows, his expression a mix of relief and apprehension. He looked raw yet determined, the fire in his eyes speaking volumes. "We did it," he said, breaking the silence that pressed heavily between them. "Yes, but at what cost?" Elena replied, her voice tinged with sorrow as she took a step toward him. The sting of loss lingered like smoke in the air. They had fought for their freedom, but victory felt hollow and surrounded by reminders of brutality. He stepped closer, worry etching lines on his brow. "We had no choice, Elena. They forced our hand." "I know." She swallowed hard, memories of the battle flooding her mind. "But I thought I could handle it. I thought I wanted this. I didn't want it to feel like this." Marco reached for her, his hand warm against her skin. "What you're feeling is normal. It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you care." "I thought I wanted vengeance," she said, a tremor in her voice. "But seeing what we did, I don't know if I can bear it. I didn't just lose a piece of them. I lost a piece of myself." He searched her eyes, his thumb grazing her cheek. "You didn't lose part of yourself. You reclaimed it. You stood up against them, against everything that tried to break you." His words resonated within her, igniting a flicker of hope. But guilt tangled with that hope, creating an uneasy tension. But the aftermath, the blood on our hands. "Sometimes the path to freedom is paved with ash," Marco said, his voice low and steady. "But we can decide what to do with this moment. We can choose to rise, to forge a new path from these ashes." Echoes of their shared passion stirred in her heart, battling against the shadows of doubt. "What if I can't?" she asked softly, fear creeping in. "You can," he assured her, his grip tightening. "We can. Together." As they stood in the wake of destruction, a deep understanding passed between them. It was raw and unfiltered, a connection that transcended the physical. They had faced the darkness and emerged alive. Now they could either drown in doubt or rise stronger together. Elna took a deep breath, courage rushing through her veins. "Okay," she whispered, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Let's make that promise. Let's turn these ashes into something beautiful." But as they began to outline their next steps, she couldn't shake the underlying anxiety that clawed at her gut. The rival. Family may have been quelled, but other factions in the world of crime would be waiting to take their place. Peace was an illusion. Suddenly, sirens blared in the distance. Marco's expression turned grave. "We need to move," he said. "If the police arrive, we'll get caught up in the mess." The urgency of the situation snapped her back into reality, and she nodded quickly. They moved swiftly through the wreckage, hearts pounding, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The street outside was eerily quiet, the chaos contained within the warehouse walls. As they slipped into the darkness of the alley, Elena felt a mixture of dread and excitement. They were free, from the battle, from Victor's grip. But the price of that freedom loomed large like a dark cloud. "What's next for us?" she asked, fear creeping back into her tone. "We gather our allies, reestablish our place. We need to show the others we're not to be trifled with," Marco replied, his tone firm. "Are we still part of this world? The violence? The treachery?" She couldn't help but question their next step. Marco paused, his eyes meeting hers. "We can change it. It's messy and dark, but we can be different. We can build a legacy that's ours, one built on trust." As he spoke, a fire ignited within her again. The thought of forging a world together, one that stood for justice instead of chaos, filled her with purpose. But the shadows whispered doubts. Was it possible to create something good in a world steeped in blood? With each passing moment, the sirens grew louder, cutting through her thoughts. Elena and Marco hurried down the street, adrenaline flooding their bodies as they took sharp turns to evade the flashing lights, their hearts racing. Finally, they reached the car parked in a hidden spot. Marco slid into the driver's seat and she followed, the urgency of their situation driving them. "Get ready," he warned, firing the engine to life. As they sped away, she looked back at the warehouse, the embodiment of their recent struggle. It still burned in her mind, a reminder of everything they had fought for. The metallic heaviness of survival settled in her chest. They were alive, but they were also forever changed. The streets flashed by in a blur of lights and darkened corners, urgency propelling them into the unknown. With thoughts of their chaotic world swirling in her mind, Elena found herself torn. Could they truly carve a path that led to something worth living for? "Just promise me, Marco, No matter where we end up, we won't forget who we are, she said, her voice steady with a newfound determination. His grip tightened on the steering wheel, and he nodded. I promise. We'll rise from the ashes together. As they drove deeper into the heart of the city, the weight of their past battle loomed larger than life. They had both tasted the bitterness of violence, yet here in this chaotic moment was a chance to reclaim their dreams. Together. A spark ignited between them, and she felt the heat of ambition, the fire of hope. They were on the brink of a new chapter, bound by the covenant of their past and the desire to change their shared destiny. As the night deepened, Elena finally began to believe that from the ashes, they could indeed build a future. A legacy that could rise stronger, conquer the darkness, and illuminate their path forward. 6. Shadow of Vengeance. Echoes of vengeance and desire. The moon hung high, a silent witness to the chaos that had unfolded and the new path that lay ahead. Elena stood on the balcony of their temporary hideout, taking in the vibrant city below. Each light glimmering like a star reminded her of the dreams she once held. But now those dreams had morphed into something darker. They were echoes of vengeance and desire that reverberated in her heart, propelling her forward. Marco leaned against the doorframe, watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Can't sleep? He asked, his voice low and steady. Elena turned to face him, the vulnerability of their recent battles flooding her mind. I can't stop thinking about what we did, she confessed. The blood on our hands. He stepped closer, closing the distance, his presence a comforting balm. That was survival, he reminded her, and every choice we made brought us closer to this moment. We are still here. We can still build something from the ashes. There was a flicker of hope in his words, but doubt shadowed the edges of her heart. Could they really turn their past into a future worth living? As the city pulsed with life below, she sensed the world was waiting for them to reclaim their place. A future where? She asked, leaning against the balcony railing. In a world built on betrayal? Marco's eyes searched hers, the weight of unspoken emotions heavy in the air. We fight to change it. We don't have to accept their rules. We make our own. He spoke with conviction, but Elena felt a tumult within her, a conflict between longing and fear. The deeper they delved into this world, the more blood would stain their hands. Was she ready for that? The first hint of dawn began to break, painting the horizon in hues of purple and gold. As the light crept in, a slow realization washed over her. The day carried the promise of a new start, but would they be able to step into it? Are we prepared for what lies ahead, she murmured, looking at Marco with uncertainty. We may awaken the very monsters we sought to derail. But we're the heroes of our story, he replied, offering a small, reassuring smile that hinted at the passion still simmering beneath the surface. Together, we can navigate the darkness. Her heart flickered at the word together. She had spent years feeling isolated, alone in a world that wanted to chew her up and spit her out. They were bound by a shared purpose now, and, underneath the weight of their blood-stained past, she felt an ember of desire reignite. As they stood on the edge of possibility, Marco took a step closer, closing the gap between them. She could feel the heat radiating off him, a mix of warmth and urgency. I know this isn't easy, he said, voice low, but you're not alone anymore. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Every moment with him carried the potential for more, a promise of passion intertwined with their fight for survival. She reached out, their fingers brushing against each other, and that spark ignited into something more powerful. They were pulled into each other's orbit, the world fading away. With the sun rising behind them, casting a warm glow across the balcony, Elena leaned into Marco, closing her eyes. Their lips met softly at first, but soon ignited into a fiery kiss that wrapped around them, erasing the fear and doubt clouding her heart. But just as quickly as it began, doubt invaded once more. Breaking the kiss, she stepped back, heart pounding like a drum. What if we fail, she asked, the vulnerability spilling out of her. What if this all leads to more bloodshed? Marco held her gaze, the weight of her words hanging between them. We'll only fail if we don't try, he replied, his voice firm. And I refuse to let the past define us. We fight for the future. We fight for each other. As the sun rose higher, bathing the room in light, Elena felt clarity washing over her. The echoes of their past, the violence, the turmoil, they would always be a part of her. But they didn't have to dictate her future. She could be more than just a survivor. She could be a fighter. We can build something stronger, she said finally, determination brewing in her heart. And I want you by my side. Relief flickered in Marco's eyes. Then let's move forward. Together they resolved to face whatever came next, unwilling to retreat into the shadows of their past anymore. Days melted into a blurred mix of planning and preparation. Together they brought together allies from the fringes of their world, individuals who were seeking change, who had witnessed the darkness of the mafia life and yearned for something better. On the night before their major confrontation with the remaining factions, Elena stood with Marco under a vast canvas of stars, the city's pulse echoing behind them. Tomorrow, she said, her voice shaky but filled with resolve, we reclaim our lives. Marco wrapped an arm around her, his warmth infusing her with courage. The twinkling stars felt like a guiding light, illuminating their path forward. In that moment, we'll show them that the echoes of vengeance and desire can create something greater, he declared, his voice steady. As they gazed into the night, a shared silence enveloped them, binding their desires and hopes like fragile threads woven together. In that stillness, Elena understood that the past was painful, but from it, she drew power and resolve. Tomorrow would be a battle, yes, but it could also be the dawn of everything they desired. She felt a surge of love for Marco, the man who had stood by her side through blood and tears, willing to fight for the life they both deserved. Together, they would carve their path, a future shimmering with the echoes of their struggles, but brightened by the fire of their shared passion. They had learned that the ashes of their past could indeed give rise to something beautiful, transforming the darkness into a beacon of hope. 7. Shadow of Vengeance. Love's Bitter Reckoning. The morning sun crept into Elena's room, casting soft beams of light that felt warm against her skin. It was a new day, yet the air was thick with anticipation. Today marked their confrontation with the last remnants of the rival family. It was time to reclaim their lives, but as she stared at her reflection, doubt gnawed at her insides. Love and vengeance had intertwined in ways she never expected, and she was afraid of what the outcome would bring. Marco was already up, his focus intense as he sharpened his knives, each glinting blade reflecting the sunlight. "Are you ready?" he asked without looking up, his voice steady but laced with tension. Elena took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, though uncertainty still hung like a shadow in the back of her mind. She was ready to fight, but the thought of encountering enemies marked by betrayal sent shivers down her spine. "Today, we finish this," he said, finally meeting her gaze. The determination in his eyes kindled a flame within her, but there was also a heaviness that mirrored her doubts. As they prepared, Elena's thoughts drifted to their journey together. Each moment spent fighting side by side had forged a bond deeper than she could have imagined. But in that bond lay a truth that loomed large. They were stepping into a world where love and violence coexisted, where passion could just as easily lead to destruction. Once dressed and equipped, they ventured into the cool morning air. The streets felt heavy with tension, teeming with the promise of confrontation. Each step felt weighted, grounded in the reality that their past would collide with the present. "We shouldn't rush in blindly," Elena cautioned, glancing at Marco as they walked. "We can't predict how this will end. What if it leads to more bloodshed?" Marco paused and turned to face her, the pulse of the city thrumming in the backdrop. "We're not rushing in without a plan. We've prepared for this moment. But what we need to remember is why we're fighting. It's not just for revenge, it's for a future." His words hung between them, a reminder of the stakes intertwined with their emotions. It wasn't just about survival. It was about forging a new world from the ashes of the old. But as they moved closer to their destination, fear crept into Elena's heart like icy fingers. At last, they reached the abandoned warehouse, their final battleground, shrouded in silence. As they entered, the shadows whispered of violence and danger. Elena's breath quickened, and memories of the bloodshed they had already witnessed flashed through her mind. "We stick together, no matter what," Marco reminded her, his voice cutting through her spiraling thoughts. She nodded, steeling herself. They took their positions near the entrance, adrenaline thrumming like a pulse. She felt the weight of the gun in her hand, steady and cold. But as she glanced over at Marco, the fierceness in his eyes gave her strength. Moments stretched into an eternity as they waited. Then the sound of footsteps drew closer. The tension in the air erupted, and their enemies poured into the space, a specter of anger marching forward. Victor's loyalists stood before them, faces twisted with fury, eyes burning with vengeance of their own. "Look who decided to show up," one of them sneered, his grip tightening on his weapon. "You think you can take us down?" "Yes," Elena said, her voice steady, surprising even herself. The courage surged within her, fueled by the fire of determination. "You don't control us anymore. This ends today." At that, chaos erupted. Gunfire and shouts drowned out reason, and Elena found herself lost in the surge of battle. She moved fluidly, her instincts taking over, and for a moment, memories of fear and weakness fell away. Each shot was a declaration, each movement a reminder of her strength. She fought with Marco by her side, their rhythms synchronized as they faced their enemies together. But as bullets flew, the ghosts of betrayal loomed large. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for the very love that bound them together. In the midst of the chaos, Elena caught sight of Victor in the distance, a predatory gleam in his eyes as he targeted them. "You think you can defy me?" he shouted over the sounds of chaos. "You think love can save you?" Marco shot back with a fierce determination. "Love is our strength. It binds us and gives us power." Elena felt the weight of those words. Love was not just an emotion, it was a force. It fueled her resolve. And even as bullets whizzed past, she felt herself moving toward Victor, determined to confront the demon of her past. She ducked and weaved, adrenaline pumping through her veins until she faced him. Victor smirked, but she stood her ground. "You don't control me anymore," she declared, raising her weapon. "This is for everything you've taken from me." Victor laughed, but the sound was hollow. "You think you can simply erase the past? You'll be haunted by it." With a furious shout, Elena pulled the trigger, and the echo of the gunshot rang in the air. But as she did, she felt the weight of what she was choosing, an act of vengeance versus the chance to break free. The bullet found its mark, striking Victor, and the moment hung heavily. Chaos faded into silence as he fell. For a brief moment, time stood still, and Elena felt the thrill of victory surge through her. But along with it came a bitter taste of regret. The aftermath unraveled like a slow nightmare. With Victor down, the remaining enemies dispersed, fear evident in their eyes. Marco found her amidst the ruins, breathless and fierce. "We did it!" he yelled, pulling her into an embrace. But even in his arms, a pang of sorrow shot through her. "At what cost, Marco?" she whispered. "Was this truly victory, or was it merely a bitter reckoning with the price of love cloaked in vengeance?" His grip tightened. "We fought for our lives, Elena. We can't forget the reason we did this." As the others fled, silence filled the space around them. Elena's heart was heavy with the weight of their choices. Vengeance had brought them relief, but it felt lined with sorrow and loss. "I've sacrificed a part of myself," she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "I thought fighting would set me free, but it only revealed how much I still have to learn about love and redemption." Marco's eyes softened, and he cupped her face tenderly. "We'll find a way together. Love isn't just about joy, it's about understanding. We've broken our chains, but it won't be easy. Forgiveness takes time." As they embraced amidst the wreckage, Elena realized that love was intricate and messy. It ran deep, tangled in the sorrow and joy of their journey. Though the battle was won, the war within would take time. In that moment, she understood that it was not just about the freedom they had fought for, but about the path to healing that lay ahead. Love would be their guide, and together they could learn to weave a new story from the remnants of their past. The road might be long, but they could rise from love's bitter reckoning, carving a path toward hope and new beginnings. 8. Shadow of vengeance. The price of a shattered heart. Elena paced the dimly lit room, her heart racing as if trying to outrun her thoughts. The victory they had won against Victor's faction felt like a fragile glass, beautiful but ready to shatter under the slightest pressure. They had fought hard, yet the aftermath left her feeling hollow. The walls echoed with the ghosts of the past, whispers of what they had lost and what was still at stake. She had finally severed her ties to the life that had imprisoned her, yet in the wreckage she felt more alone than ever. A knock pierced the silence and Marco stepped inside, his expression unreadable. "Hey," he said softly, leaning against the doorframe, trying to gauge her mood. "You all right?" Elena forced a smile, but it faltered like a fading star. "Just thinking," she replied, turning away. Thoughts swirled in her mind like a tempest, battling against the reality of their new lives. "About what?" he pressed, stepping closer. Concern etched across his brow. "The fight?" "No," she said, a pang of truth slicing through her. "About us." Marco's brow furrowed. "Us? I thought we were in this together." His voice dropped an octave, a mix of protectiveness and confusion. "We are," she insisted, her voice wavering. "But with every choice we make, I wonder if we're losing ourselves. I wanted to fight against the darkness, but I didn't think it would hurt this much." He crossed the space between them, reaching out to stroke her arm, gently. "Pain is part of it. We've both paid the price, but we've also gained freedom and strength." "Have we?" she asked quietly. "What about our hearts? What about the pieces we've lost along the way?" The room felt smaller, and Elena could feel the weight of truth in the air. The scars they bore were more than skin deep. Even after surviving, they had shattered parts of themselves. Marco's silence hung in the air, an uncomfortable pause. "I know I've made mistakes in the past," he finally said, "but I want to grow from them. I want to build a life with you." Elena looked away, battling the flood of emotions. "But can we? Will haunted memories always loom over us?" A flash of hurt flickered in his eyes. "Elena, we can't erase the past, but we can choose what to do with it. The question is, can you trust me with your heart?" She was teetering on the edge of vulnerability, the fear of disappointment clawing at her. "That's the price, isn't it? To love each other, we must risk everything." His hands gripped her shoulders, grounding her. "And we already have. We've stood side by side against enemies. We can stand against our own fears too." Elena searched his eyes, a potent mix of emotions swirling between them. "But what if one of us falters? What if I can't bear the weight?" He leaned closer, his breath hot against her skin. "Then we carry it together. Love is not meant to be easy. It's messy, full of sacrifices, but it's worth fighting for." A flicker of hope ignited within her, but she still felt tethered to their past. What if that battle breaks us? As if sensing her fear, Marco cupped her face in his hands. "Then we will rebuild. Love will always find a way to bring us back, even after the darkest moments." Elena took a shaky breath, feeling the truth wash over her. "And if you're right, then maybe choosing to love you is the bravest choice I can make." Just then, tension crackled in the air as a loud crash resounded from outside. They shared a startled glance before rushing to the nearest window. Things were about to escalate in ways they never anticipated. Below them, chaos unfolded. A rival gang had caught wind of their victory and was launching an attack. Gunshots rang through the air, each one sending a pulse of dread through Elena's body. "It's a war zone out there," Marco exclaimed, his voice urgent. "We need to act fast." Elena felt dread curling in her gut. What about the people we've allied with? They can't get caught in this. "Exactly," Marco replied, determination etched into his features. "We rally them. Our past doesn't determine our future. We need to protect our own." A rush of adrenaline flooded her system. "Then let's do it." As they grabbed their weapons and rushed out into the chaos, a surge of purpose ignited within her. They had the power to change the narrative, to protect those who mattered to them and each other. "Stick together," Marco shouted over the chaos. They dashed into the throes of Battle, a mix of fear and excitement electrifying the air around them. The world fell away as they fought side by side, moving seamlessly as if they had done this 1,000 times. Each gunshot rang out like a heartbeat, a reminder of the stakes. But with every moment of triumph, Elena felt the weight of her heart, half filled with love, half burdened by fear. In the midst of the chaos, an enemy came racing toward them, gun aimed. Without thinking, Elena reacted. She aimed and fired, the bullet piercing through the silence. The man fell, and for a moment she felt powerful. But then the reality washed over her. This was not just a game. Lives were lost. The cost was heavy. Marco glanced back at her, his gaze filled with both fear and admiration. "You did well," he shouted, but she could see the confusion in his eyes. "Remember why we fight." With each victory, she had the bitter taste of loss nagging at the corners of her heart. "I'll always remember," she yelled back, wiping the sweat from her brow. But at what price? They pressed forward as enemies continued to fall. Each shot fired felt like a reckoning, echoing through the tangled history they had woven together. The fight surged on, a violent dance of survival. But just as the tide began to turn in their favor, Elena felt a sharp pain pierce her side. She gasped, shock freezing her in place as darkness began to creep into her vision. The world spun, and she collapsed to the ground, a deep red blooming across her shirt. "Elena!" Marco's voice cut through the chaos, filled with urgency and raw panic. The sound of his voice rang in her ears, but she struggled to stay awake. In that moment, she felt the weight of everything. The battles fought, the love shared, the dreams both bright and shattered. Maybe this was the price, the ultimate sacrifice for her heart and for love itself. As darkness threatened to swallow her, a thought flickered in her mind. Whatever happened next would either forge their love in two, something unbreakable, or fracture her heart beyond repair. In that heartbeat of uncertainty, she knew that love came at a cost, but she also hoped it was a cost worth the price of admission. As her vision faded, she held on to the belief that no matter what awaited her, love, true love, would always find a way back home. 9. Shadow of Vengeance. The Reckoning of Sins and Serpents. Elena woke up to darkness, the weight of heavy silence pressing against her. The familiar hum of adrenaline was gone, replaced by a dull throb in her side. Where am I? Panic bubbled up inside her, but she forced herself to breathe. The last thing she remembered was the chaos of battle and Marco's desperate shout. Suddenly, the dim light flickered on, and her eyes adjusted to the small room. It was bare except for a single bed and a tall window with iron bars. She was alive, but fear coursed through her veins. Where was Marco? "Hey, you're awake." A voice broke the silence, smooth yet sardonic. It sent shivers down her spine. She turned to see Victor leaning against the wall, smirking with a twisted sense of victory. "Victor," she gasped, memories flooding back. "What do you want?" "Just to talk," he said, taking a step closer. "You and I have a lot to discuss regarding your little rebellion." Her heart raced. Anger began to boil beneath the surface. They had defeated him. He should be dead, not standing there so smugly. "What do you want with me?" she demanded, keeping her voice steady despite her fear. He chuckled darkly, a sound that sent prickling sensations racing along her skin. "Oh, you should know by now. I always get what I want. You think you can defy me and walk away? The price is far too high." Elena clenched her fists, determination igniting within her. They had fought hard for their freedom. She couldn't allow him to snatch it away. "I'm not afraid of you, Victor. You have no power here." "Is that so?" he said, feigning interest as he paced in front of her. "You fight bravely. I'll give you that. But you're still tangled in a web of lies and sins, my dear. Remember, every serpent has its bite." "Enough games," she snapped. "What do you want?" Victor stepped closer, his eyes glinting with menace. "I want to offer you a deal. Join me again. Help me take back what you've stolen from me. I'll forget your little rebellion. For now." The world around her spun as she processed his words. He was asking her to betray Marco, to turn her back on everything they had fought for. Hatred bubbled over inside her. I would never work with you. I'd sooner die. Ah, but everyone has a price, he said, grinning. And I know yours. If you don't agree, I will make your precious Marco suffer. Fear clawed at her insides. What do you mean? I have my people working on him as we speak. Do you think I would let my enemies escape? I'm afraid the reckoning is coming for him too. No, Elena cried, rising to her feet. Let him go. He raised an eyebrow, his expression smug and satisfied. Then you know what you have to do. Join me and I will spare him. I will let you two go free. You can have your new life, unhindered by your past. There was a moment of silence, a low thrum of choosing. She felt lost, the weight of her choices crashing down on her. Could she betray Marco to protect him? Did she even have a choice? Choose wisely, Elena. You have until the morning. With that, Victor's presence faded from the room, leaving her alone in a suffocating silence. Elena paced the small space, her mind racing. She felt cornered, as if the walls were closing in on her. Marco. Her heart ached at the thought of him suffering because of her actions, but turning to Victor would mean surrendering everything they had fought for. Frustration and despair clawed at her insides, struggling against the dread of the situation. She needed to think, to process. What could she do? Hours stretched on, dark and tangled in her thoughts. She ran through possibilities, every scenario echoing in her mind. If she agreed, it would mean turning her back on the one person who understood her, the one she loved. But if she didn't, suddenly the sound of footsteps approached, shaking her from her thoughts. The door creaked open, and Marco stepped into the room, battered but alive. Relief washed over her, almost overwhelming. Marco, she exclaimed, rushing to him. He looked at her, worry etched across his face. Elena, what did he say? He offered me a deal, she said, her voice trembling. He wants me to join him again. Never! Marco's voice was fierce, and she saw the fire ignite within him. You don't need to listen to him. We can fight this together. But you don't understand. He said you're in danger. I don't want anything to happen to you. If I agree, he'll let us go. Don't. You dare! Marco's gaze pierced through her, raw with concern. You can't let him manipulate you. This is what he wants. He wants to break us apart. Tears filled her eyes, and she felt torn apart. But I can't let him hurt you. I can't. Choosing him would crush everything we've built together, he said firmly. You can't let fear control you. You're stronger than this. We've fought for our future. Don't give it up now. His words struck a chord deep within her, a reminder of their shared resolve in the face of despair. But what if? Don't think, he said, grabbing her shoulders urgently. You trust me, don't you? You're not alone in this fight. We'll figure it out together. Elena nodded, the strength radiating from Marco igniting hope within her. She couldn't let fear win. They had battled betrayal and faced darkness side by side. Their love was built on trust and shared pain. Okay, she replied, taking a deep breath. I won't betray you. Let's fight this together. Marco smiled, the tension lifting from his shoulders. That's my girl. We'll take back our lives, no matter the cost. They stood united, hearts racing as they prepared to face whatever awaited them. The stakes were clear. The reckoning was upon them. Elena firmly grasped his hand, feeling the warmth of their bond tethering her to hope. As dawn broke outside, the last vestiges of fear faded. Love anchored them, binding them together against the serpents lurking in the shadows. They would face Victor, and whatever lay ahead, believing in each other was their greatest strength. Together they would reclaim not only their lives but each other, ready to confront the reckoning of sins and serpents, determined to rise stronger than before. 10. Shadow of Vengeance. The broken crown of love and ruin. Elena stood at the edge of the abandoned warehouse, the morning light spilling over the horizon like a promise. Her heart thudded in her chest, heavy with the weight of decisions that had to be made. Beside her, Marco seemed to sense her turmoil as he studied her with those piercing eyes that promised protection. The air was thick with tension, and the smells of dust and metal filled her senses. It felt like the calm before the storm. Are you ready? Marco asked, his voice steady. Yet there was an undercurrent of anxiety. "I'm as ready as I'll ever be," she replied, though her voice wavered. Inside her, uncertainty twisted like a serpent. They had chosen to face Victor together, but the reality of their situation pressed down on her more than ever. "Whatever happens today, remember we stand united," he said, squeezing her hand. The warmth of his touch sent comfort coursing through her veins. She nodded, grateful for his unwavering strength, but deep down, a part of her still worried about the love they shared. Would this fight shatter them? Would the choices they made today leave scars too deep to heal? As they entered the warehouse, a heavy silence enveloped them. Shadows from broken beams danced along the walls. The atmosphere was charged with memories of tumult, a battlefield where they fought both against Victor and against the darker facets of their own hearts. And then the calm broke. Victor emerged from the dimness, flanked by his loyalists. A twisted smile stretched across his face, full of malice. "Welcome back, little rebels," he said, his tone mocking. "I knew you couldn't resist the call of power." Elena's stomach churned at the sight of him, the embodiment of her greatest fears. "We're not here to play games, Victor," she said, her voice gaining strength as she found her footing. "You've lost. We've won." His laughter echoed through the vast space, a chilling sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "Oh dear Elena, do you think this is over? You wear a broken crown of love and ruin. You've lost more than you realize." "Stop pretending you know me," she shot back, anger flaring. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm not that girl anymore." "Is that so?" Victor took a step closer, his eyes gleaming with cruelty. "You're still defined by your choices, my dear. Every step you take only leads you deeper into darkness." He gestured toward the shadowy corners of the warehouse. The memories flooded back, the violent past they had fought against, the fear that loomed like specters. But she wouldn't allow him to control her any longer. In that moment, she remembered Marco's words. Love is not just about the good, but standing firm even when it's hard. It was time to reclaim her strength. "You can't control me or my choices. We chose to stand together. We chose to break this cycle." With that declaration, she felt a surge of confidence. Marco moved beside her, solid as a rock, his presence a reminder of what they had built. Victor's eyes narrowed, fury rising within him. "You think you and your lover can take down an empire? How sweet! But love will never conquer what I have built." As the tension climbed, the atmosphere crackled. Elena knew this was the moment. They needed to act, to make a choice that would shape their future. "Remember why we fight," Marco shouted, his voice ringing through the warehouse. "We fight for each other. We fight for freedom." In that instant, it felt as if time stood still. The weight of their choices pressed heavily on their shoulders, but they knew they had to face the darkness. The battle was not just for victory, it was for redemption. "Enough of this," Victor snarled, his voice rising in anger. "You've chosen the wrong side, and I will make you regret it." Suddenly, chaos erupted. The loyalists rushed forward, weapons raised, ready for a fight. The air exploded with gunfire, and screams echoed like a deadly symphony. Elena felt her heart hammering in her chest as she and Marco fought side by side. They were a whirlwind of motion, but as their enemies advanced, it grew harder to hold back the tide. The sound of bullets whizzing by reminded her of their past struggles, but she pushed through, determined to rewrite their story. With each blow they struck, memories of pain fueled their fire. They fought not just against Victor and his men, but against their own doubts and fears. Love surged within them, propelling their actions, reminding them that they were more powerful together. But just as victory felt within reach, Elena felt a sharp pain in her side. She spun to see one of Victor's men lunging at her, a knife gleaming in his hand. The world blurred as she staggered, hitting the ground hard, gasping in shock. "Elena!" Marco shouted, horror vibrating in his voice. The chaos around them seemed to drown out everything else as she felt the warmth spread from her wound, mixing with the chill of fear creeping back in. The broken crown of her heart throbbed painfully with the weight of her choices. Would this be the price she paid? Marco rushed to her side, his hands shaking as he assessed the damage. "Stay with me, Elena. You're going to be okay. I promise." "No, Marco," she whispered, panic flashing in her eyes as darkness loomed near. "I shouldn't have come here. I shouldn't have fought. Don't talk like that. He pressed a cloth against her wound, a desperate attempt to stem the bleeding. You're strong. We've come too far to give up now. Fight with me. In that moment, she saw the truth reflected in his eyes. This was love, raw and gritty, where sacrifice often brought pain. They fought beside one another, not just to conquer enemies, but to protect the love they'd built against all odds. As dizziness settled over her, a sudden realization struck her like lightning. Love doesn't always come wrapped in perfect bows. Sometimes it's the price we pay. But through every wound, every scar, there is hope for healing. Marco, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. No matter what happens, we fought together. That's what matters. He squeezed her hand tightly, determination anchoring them both in that moment. We will get through this. I won't let you go. We are stronger than they think. As he fought back against the invading chaos, Elena let herself breathe in the love they shared. Even as shadows threatened to consume her, a flicker of hope ignited within. The battle raged on, and she felt the pull of consciousness fading. As darkness began to close in, she clung to one truth. Even amidst ruin and pain, love remains an unbroken thread. If they survived this, they would rise, crowned not by victories or losses, but by the strength of their hearts. With that last thought, she surrendered to the darkness, trusting that love would find a way to guide them back into the light. 11. Shadow of Vengeance. The heart's reckoning in a storm of shadows. Elena gasped awake, the taste of salt on her lips mingling with the metallic sting of blood. She blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to the dim light around her. Marco's anxious face hovered nearby, searching her own for any signs of life. Her heart raced as she instinctively reached for him, needing the comfort of his presence. What happened? You were hurt, he said, his voice rough with worry. But I'm here. You're safe. Just breathe. The weight of their last moments together crashed back. The ambush, the blade plunging into her side, and the chaos of that cruel battle. Confusion clouded her mind as she tried to recall every detail, every choice made in the storm of shadows that had engulfed them. Victor? She croaked. He's gone, Marco assured her, but his eyes told another story. For now, at least. I drove his men off, but we can't let our guard down. She felt a flicker of relief, but it was darkened by the pain coursing through her body. As he carefully helped her sit up, the world swayed dangerously. She fought the urge to close her eyes and slip back into darkness. They were still in the warehouse, but it felt like a different world now, one filled with whispers of sorrow and uncertainty. Where are we? She asked, her voice rasping. It's a safe room, deeper in the warehouse. You've been unconscious for hours. I couldn't leave you. Marco's expression was a potent mix of relief and anguish. I thought I lost you. Her heart ached at the pain in his eyes. She reached out to touch his cheek, feeling the rough stubble under her fingertips, reminding her that he was alive, that they were alive. I'm here, she whispered. I'll fight through this. Just then, thunder rumbled outside, a fierce storm rolling in as if the heavens themselves understood the gravity of their situation. Rain lashed against the old warehouse, creating an almost symphonic background to their fears and hopes. Ankara want to go back out. We need to find the others, she insisted, struggling to find her strength. No, Marco said firmly. You need to rest. You can't fight when you're like this. But we can't leave them behind, she countered, anger bubbling to the surface, fueled by frustration and fear. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I understand your fear, Elena, but a reckless charge into the storm won't help anyone, least of all you. We need a plan. The storm outside seemed to mirror the tempest within her. She could feel the tension crackling in the air, a reminder of everything they had sacrificed. They had come so far together, their love forged in battles and scarred by choices. The last remnants of their adversary were still lurking. Elena, Marco said softly, pulling her closer to him, we face the shadows together. But if you overexert yourself now, it could cost you everything. We can't afford that. His words washed over her like the rain falling outside, and her heart sank. Could she bear to wait, feeling so helpless? Or was doing nothing a form of surrender? The questions twisted inside her, and she felt the dam of her emotions threatening to break. "Please, I need you to trust me," Marco added, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. "We'll devise a strategy that plays to our strengths. Love doesn't wane in darkness. It grows brighter." In that moment, she felt something inside her shift. The bond they had built felt like a lifeline, pulling her back from the edge, reminding her that she was not alone in this struggle. "Okay," she murmured, "I trust you." As the storm raged on, Marco began to outline their next steps. They would reach out to those loyal to them, gather the remnants of their allies, and deal a final blow to their enemies. "But first we need to get you healed," he said, his eyes serious as he glanced at her wound. "Then let's make a plan," she said, her determination rekindled. Hours passed like seconds as they strategized their next move. Every plan was discussed in hushed tones, overshadowed by the storm's relentless fury. Each flash of lightning illuminated the walls, reminding them both of the tempests they'd faced within their own hearts. Finally, as the skies began to clear and the rain lessened, Elena felt a newfound sense of purpose. They had made a plan, forged in love and necessity, but it was still a heavy weight. "What if things go wrong?" she asked, the fear creeping back into her voice. Marco took her hands in his, grounding her. "No matter what happens, our love is a shield. You mean everything to me, and whatever awaits, I'll face it beside you." A fierce intensity burned in his gaze, and for the first time since waking, she felt a surge of hope. With renewed focus, they made their way back outside. The air felt fresh, and as they stepped into the aftermath of the storm, they looked at each other, knowing that together they could face anything. The shadows that lurked might be vast, but their bond was stronger. Elena took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the crisp, clean air. "Let's do this," she said, determination spurring her on. As they moved forward, the echoes of their choices resonated within her. They had both paid dearly for their love, and in both triumph and pain, their hearts had weathered the darkest of storms. Each decision they made would define not just their survival, but also the love that had grown brighter through the shadows. Though the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, she understood now that love was not about the absence of fear. It was about standing together in the face of it. With Marco by her side, almost like a fortress, she knew they could weather any storm and emerge triumphant. Together they faced the winds of fate, prepared to reclaim their lives from the ruins and rebuild their future with the strength forged through every trial. The heart's reckoning was not the end, but a powerful beginning. Sure 12th. Shadow of Vengeance. Embrace of the reckoning moon. The moon hung full and bright, casting silver light over the abandoned city. It illuminated the ruins of old buildings, remnants of a life that had been coated in darkness. Yet tonight, a different kind of light filled the air, a sense of hope and determination. Elena stood at the edge of the warehouse roof, taking deep breaths, the cool night air refreshing on her skin. Tonight wasn't just another battle. It was the night everything would change. "Are you ready?" Marco's voice brought her back to the moment. He stood beside her, his silhouette strong against the glowing orb above. She could see the determination etched into his features, the way the light caught his eyes and turned them almost otherworldly. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. They had sacrificed so much to get to this point. The reckoning was upon them, and the stakes had never been higher. The sound of distant footsteps echoed in the night as they waited. Allies had gathered, each one standing with their own scars and stories, drawn together by shared struggles and the hope of freedom. Even amidst lingering doubts, Elena felt a bittersweet pride. They were united, ready for whatever was to come. "We have to do this carefully," Marco reminded her, his voice low and serious. "Victor still has powerful allies. We need to strike hard and fast." She nodded, but deep within, uncertainty gnawed at her. The last time they had confronted Victor, it had almost cost her everything. Would this night be any different? Would they finally break free from the chains that bound them? As the moonlight glittered on nearby shards of glass, memories flooded back. The anger, the betrayal, and the love that had brought them back from the brink. Their love had survived darker days. Could it survive this final test? Suddenly, the sound of a gunshot rang out. breaking the stillness of the night. Elena's heart lurched as she turned to Marco, fear flashing across her face. "That's our signal," he said, eyes narrowing with determination. They quickly descended from the roof, adrenaline coursing through their veins as they joined their allies below. The atmosphere buzzed with electricity, the understanding that this was a moment they had all waited for, the embrace of the reckoning moon. The streets were alive with motion as they moved closer to Victor's hideout. A confrontation was inevitable. It loomed ahead like a tempest, and at its center stood the man who had caused them so much pain. The closer they got, the clearer the stakes became. They slipped through alleyways, moving as one, hearts pounding like war drums. As they approached, Elena felt the air grow heavy with tension. Shadows danced in the corners of her vision, and in that darkness, she could almost hear the whispered doubts that tried to claw their way back. "Stay focused," Marco said, sensing her hesitation. "We'll end this now. For us." Elena threw him a grateful look, a powerful reminder of their love's strength. "Together," she promised, her voice steadying with each step they took. They finally reached the hideout, a place that had become a symbol of everything they opposed. Armed men stood guard, eyes scanning the area for trouble. This was the moment they had been preparing for. With a swift nod from Marco, they charged forward, launching their surprise attack. Gunshots erupted, the night ignited with chaos. Elena moved with agility. She could feel every heartbeat echoing around her, each one a reminder of what was at stake. Together they fought like warriors in a dance of survival, pushing through the pain and fear, determined to reclaim their lives. "Keep pushing forward," Marco shouted, his voice cutting through the tumult. Together they fought fiercely, side by side, their understanding of one another deepening with every moment. But just as victory seemed within reach, they found themselves face to face with Victor and his most loyal henchman. The atmosphere turned electric, charged with tension and rage. "Welcome back, my little rebels," Victor sneered, his voice oozing with confidence. "You thought you could defeat me? You're merely pawns in a game far bigger than you understand." Elena's anger flared. "You've lost control, Victor. Your time is over." With those words, Victor lunged forward, launching himself into the fray. Chaos erupted again as both sides clashed. Elena's adrenaline surged, every wound they had suffered driving her forward. She had to protect everything they had built, her heart pounding not just for survival but for love. The love that had brought them here. They fought fiercely. Marco and Elena were a whirl of strength and grace. But as the chaos continued, Elena saw Victor retreat slightly, calculating, searching for weakness. "Together!" Marco called, battling nearby attackers. "We end this for good." Elena glanced at him, determination running deep within her. She pushed through the fighting, reaching Marco's side. "We can do this!" With a fierce nod, they charged toward Victor, hearts racing in unison. Just as they engaged, Victor smirked, cruel and confident. "You think you can defeat me, but you don't understand the ruins you're fighting in." "Then let's settle this once and for all," Elena shouted, refusing to back down, her voice tinged with both fear and resolve. In that moment, under the glowing embrace of the moon, they fought like never before. Elena felt adrenaline rush through her, each blow resonating through her body. But amid the fighting, her heart sank when she saw Marco falter, a shadow of pain crossing his face as Victor connected a brutal strike. "No!" Elena cried, her heart shattering. She charged at Victor, fueled by rage, everything she had fought for crashing in. But Victor didn't flinch. He looked at her, eyes filled with contempt. "You have lost, little girl." "No!" She surged forward, desperation pushing her to summon the last of her strength. Instead of fear, she embraced the reckoning, driven by love's light and resolve. With a swift motion, she struck, and the moment expanded in clarity, echoing with the power of every choice she had ever made. Victor stumbled back, shock and pain flickering across his face. In that heartbeat, Elena understood the depth of sacrifice and the weight of carving a new path. The shadows that had loomed were slowly receding. They had faced their demons together, and now it was time to bring down the final contenders. As Victor fell, she turned to Marco, rushes of gratitude flooding through her. Their love had survived the darkest nights and stood tall against the fiercest storms. Together they would rise from the ruins. As the moon cast its light upon them, she knew this was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. With each heartbeat, they had reclaimed their lives, breaking free from the chains of fear that bound them. Elena took Marco's hand, feeling the warmth enveloping them. The darkness had finally given way, and their love shone brighter than the full moon above. They had weathered the storm and emerged victorious, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead together. Tonight, the reckoning moon bore witness to their triumph, lighting the path toward a future filled with hope and love, ready for every twist and turn this new beginning would bring.